Hello, everybody. If you're watching live, as always, please feel free to ask any questions along the way. If you think you might like to join me on the show yourself, please do get in contact. My details on the channel's About page. Next week, we'll be talking with Brian Cantrell, but today's guest is Seon, aka Unexpected Maker. Hello, Seon.
Hello. Hey,
How are you doing?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Good, yeah, fine, thank you. Yeah. Would you like to just introduce yourself, say who you are and what you do? And
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm Seon. Many people know me as Unexpected Maker. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and I started off as a YouTuber doing electronic stuff, but I'm now a product designer manufacturer. Design and build a whole lot of different microcontroller-based products and build them back there downstairs.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Apparently there's an echo. I'm not sure if that's something we can resolve, but I can't hear it.
I can't hear an echo either.
No. Okay. Apologies, Sven. Okay, so shall we start with your childhood and how things were for you when you were young?
Yeah, sure.
What did you get up to in your youth?
I was a terror. Or as my grandparents kept telling me. So yeah, when I was young, pre-computers, I used to pull stuff apart and never be able to put them back together again.
Okay.
So our first gaming console we got, which was a Pong game, I didn't even last a week before I pulled it apart and it didn't work anymore. It was a pretty unexciting game anyway, and anything got my first alarm clock, which was like one of those really, it wasn't a flip dot one, it was a digital alarm clock, right?
Yeah,
but it was
fancy.
like this crazy AM radio trashy thing, and again 2 weeks and I had it apart and couldn't put it back together again. So I used to destroy everything in the house, much to my parents' dismay. Okay. But I was inquisitive.
What was the drive to pull it apart? Was that just, as you say, curiosity, or?
Yeah, I wanted to see kind of how it worked, but I knew I'd never understand the internals of how it worked, but I still wanted to see. Like it was less about how does this work and more about wanting to see the guts of it.
Okay.
Right. Kind of, I never fooled myself into thinking that I'd really understand how the electronics inside my alarm clock would work, but I still wanted to see what it looked like. It was like
something's going on in there. Yeah.
A little bit of curiosity of seeing the stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
But I didn't electronics. I didn't pull apart animals or anything. Just electronics or mechanical things like the toaster oven. Yeah.
Yeah. It made you really popular with your parents, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think they were glad I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't encourage me to break things, but they were. I think they could have been a lot more strict, or there could have been a lot more punishment for the things that I broke than what there was. So that was good. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So, was there much encouragement for this curiosity that you had, this technology sort of twinge that was going on, or was it?
There was. There was never. We weren't a wealthy family, but we also. We were working class, right? My mum and dad both worked long hours. We had a VCR when they first came out. Dad was very much a collector of records and stuff. We used to, had a fairly nice hi-fi system, but they worked really hard for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we always, I always had access to things that I could play with and learn from and stuff. Like my dad tried getting me into electronics through, there was a company called Dick Smith Electronics, a chain, and they had books and kits that, like fun way into electronics books. And so you'd buy this book and you'd buy all the kits to go with it, and it would teach you how to put stuff together. And he kind of did that with me, but he wasn't really interested in the electronic side, but he was interested in encouraging me.
Okay.
But I got distracted really quickly and played with it a bit. And if I couldn't get it working, I'd walk away. Or even if I got it working, I'd kind of, move on to the next thing.
Right.
But they were trying to encourage me all the time. So that was good.
Fantastic. Yeah. It's nice to have that kind of support.
Yes. Well, back then you don't realize it and you don't appreciate it, but looking back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So first computers, when did they come on the scene?
So my dad was very much interested in computers, as I was, and so like he his first, or our first computer in the house, which was supposed to be a business computer for him, was a machine called a Wombat, which was an Apple II clone, an Apple II ripoff, done by a company here in Australia. I don't know. I mean, obviously, so they could reverse engineer the Apple II pretty easily, hardware-wise. Like, it's just unlike now where it's all in silicon. You know, everything was discrete chips. You look at the board and go, yeah, okay, we can copy that easily. The ROMs and stuff, I'm not sure how they did all of that, but didn't care. So I had access to this Wombat machine, which was wasn't overly exciting. I remember he went out, he spent a fortune on a 10 megabyte hard drive that was this big box. I don't think it ever really worked properly. Like, we used to get sector errors all the time. Anyway, he had this dream of doing all his business stuff on it, you know, like I think this is pre-VisiCalc, but, you know, he wanted to do stuff like that, or maybe VisiCalc had just hit. So he wanted to, like, do spreadsheeting work and run his businesses on it, but it never really eventuated, right? Because there was no real software for it, and we were just trying to learn how to use the machine. And then my first computer when I was 13, I had to spend my own money on it as well. I had to save up since I was like 10. I was saving up for a VIC-20, but the Commodore 64 had just come out, so I ended up getting a Commodore 64 with a tape drive.
Amazing. As in audio cassette tapes?
Yeah, and of course, but I couldn't have any. I had no, apart from the tapes that came with it. I wasn't allowed to have any games. I'll get to that in a moment. And I was obviously plugged into a TV, so it didn't look great. I spent more time trying to tune the TV than I did using it.
And what was that, like a shared family TV as well? So it's kind of.
No, I actually got I bought myself a TV as part of it was a black and white TV.
Brilliant.
Initially. No, I got a hand-me-down black and white crap TV, which I used for a bit, and then eventually saved up for a color TV. So my parents were trying to teach me responsibility. I could only spend my own money on it, and so I had to save up, and I was doing paper rounds, and I was doing chores and whatever. I don't really know if it was really all my own money that I spent on it, whatever else, but they definitely made me feel like I was working for it.
Right.
But they wouldn't let me buy any games. They said, if you want to, the computer's for learning, and if you want to play games on it, you have to learn how to write your own.
Okay.
A 13-year-old kid, you know.
That's frustrating.
Pre-BBSs, no information out there. How do you learn? Whatever. But it was great because I did, and I learned how to code, right?
Yeah. And so were there friends who were playing games sort of alongside you, or
no,
some kind of local community? It was just you?
Just me. And no other family friends that we had computers. I think like later on, some of my friends, you know, like one got a ZX Spectrum and one got something else, but we never really used to speak about computers. And like I was like the only person I knew at school in my age group like that had a computer. It wasn't really a social thing to talk about back then, like, you know, the whole nerd stigma thing, whatever. But it was good. Like I had to learn how to code. I mean, obviously in BASIC at the start, and learning, you know, peeking and poking on the 64 to kind of work out where a big reference manual, which was great. Back then you actually got really good documentation with the computers. And so yeah, I learned a lot. And then my uncle, I think the year later, my uncle bought me a book on assembler, the 6502 assembler, and couldn't do it. Like I just, oh my God, it was just messed with my head, and I just couldn't understand it. And like I understood the concept of that's how the machine runs the instructions, but it just looked like something foreign, like, you know, loaders and adders and this is and then jumps and whatever. So I couldn't work out in my head how to do it, and I lost interest and moved on. But yeah, so there was always kind of two computers in the house, my computer and my dad's computer.
Right. And you mentioned there's no BBS at this point. There was no friends doing this. It must have been quite isolating almost and frustrating to figure out.
Magazines and sit there typing code in from the magazine and praying that you didn't make a mistake, no syntax errors, because like going back and trying to find the errors was hard, and not even knowing if the code was going to work or not. I think from memory, I actually sent off some. You had to do it by mail. I think I mailed in. I wrote some stuff. I can't remember even what it did. It was probably something stupid, and I ended up like writing it out and sending it off to some magazines to see if I could get my code included. I don't think I ever got anything written up anywhere.
Okay.
So I'm not surprised it would have been.
And at this point, were you writing games of your own as well? Did you kind of get to that
I was
level?
writing, just with ASCII art on the screen, really crap stuff. It's basic sprites and stuff. But then eventually, once they saw that I was actually trying and I was doing stuff with it, and I was using it not to play games, slowly they started allowing me to. I think the very first game I got was Jumpman. It could have been Jumpman Junior, I'm not sure. And that was like, oh my God, I just spent so much time playing Jumpman. And then, a couple of years ago, recently, I got myself another 64 again. And the first game I got, that I downloaded and played was Jumpman and Jumpman Junior. Like, I loved it. It was
amazing.
But so eventually they let me start getting access to software.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I presume there was school going on sort of alongside this.
There was school going on, and that was a struggle for me because I was very much I was very much into the social scene as well. So I did my computing. I had no one really at school to talk about computer-wise, like with computers.
Were there computer classes or anything, or was it sort of before that?
It was. It didn't start till later on.
Yeah.
For us, year 9 was the first time. Like halfway through our high school was the first time there was a school computer class. And that was great. We had BBC Model Bs, I think. And that was great. Like I'd go in class and everyone else would be trying to learn. Like he'd be teaching and I'd just be sitting there drawing graphics on the screen and stuff. And, never paid attention or anything else. And the teachers kind of let me just do my own thing. And it was good. Like I might have. So back then you could network all the Model Bs together, and the teacher had a master machine that had like a 4-stacker disk drive thing where we could all load and save, kind of like a network where it was a server, but it wasn't a server. The way it all used to work, and I used to, when no one was looking, I used to like be moving the other students' files around on the disk drives and put them into different directories so they couldn't find them and stuff like that. I got in trouble a couple of times doing it. But I always saw my teacher. I remember his name was Mr. Barry. It looked like it's big bear, like it's big, what you'd expect like a computer teacher would look like. Big bushy beard and big round rim glasses, like the total, stereotype, whatever. And I swear he used to, like, I'd get in trouble, but there was this glint and smirk on his face.
Trying not to laugh.
Telling me off because it was like, I didn't delete their files. I was playing pranks on people. Like, it was, and I think he was quite impressed that I, knew how to do it and stuff. But I was still very much in the social thing, like outside of computer class and even, eventually, like I'd go home after school and instead of jumping on the computer, I would ring up my friends and we'd go out. Like I very much transitioned that I always had the technology at home. I went from my 64 to an Amiga 1000 to an Amiga 500. I was still programming. I was, learning C. I was doing stuff with computers, but it was a secondary thing to socializing because, girls, you could talk to girls and you could go out and have fun and play sports with your mates, and that was took over my life for a little while, but the computers kind of never went away. They were just
It's still academically in school interested, but less so sort of in your own
and at home,
time.
but just not spending as much time as I I was playing around with doing like sequencing music. I was terrible at music and drawing graphics in Deluxe Paint and stuff, and trying to, I was tinkering and playing more than coding or anything else. Yeah.
Okay. So I presume at some point then you might have found yourself working with computers as well. Possibly sort of before you maybe should have been, in inverted commas.
Yes. So so when I was at high school, I think I was year 10, or could have been year 11. No, year 10. My dad mentioned to some person. My dad had a convenience store type thing, and so the customers came in and out all the time. And he mentioned to someone about something, blah blah blah. And my son programs his computer and whatever. And next thing I knew, I was writing. It was DBase 1. I was writing software for this guy who owned owned a bunch of say old people's homes, elderly community housing, where they And for scheduling stuff and activities and stuff, I was suddenly writing software for them, and I was earning really, really good money, like hourly rate, like contract stuff.
Okay.
When I was, in year 10 at school,
Wow.
which became a big distraction because it was about, and it was more about the earning the money than it was about the doing the task. You know what I mean? It was very much, my focus was on the earning money, but I was also getting really good and skilled at writing software and stuff. And so I did that, and then I started writing. I did some software work for BP, the company that owned his convenience store chain.
Mm-hmm.
I did some work for them, and then I did just contract work for some other. My dad was kind of like shopping me around. People were trying to, getting me work. But the deal was always, we'll get you work if you want to do the work, but you got to do your schoolwork. Like, you got to do your schoolwork. Yeah,
I was
Dad.
going to ask if this was sort of a team effort with you and your dad, or if this was still trying to be strict and trying to keep you interested at the same time.
He was trying to maybe live vicariously through me.
Right.
I'm sure he would have loved it if he was a kid at that time, learning, whatever. But he was excited by the computer stuff as well, and he wanted me to learn and excel at it. Right. He definitely saw like he was a forward thinker. Mm-hmm. But I guess they were also trying to teach me responsibility, and earning my own money and being, like all the things that you want to teach your kids as a parent. I'm pretty sure none of it stuck, or very little of it. Again, looking back, I see what they were trying to do, but at the time I didn't understand what they were trying to do. So for me, it was a means to an end. So
yeah, nice. And this was all sort of high school type time frame.
Yeah, high school. Yeah. So in my year 12 computer science class, I ended up teaching the class for 3 months. Like, he got really pissed with me. Like, I just wouldn't give him a break about stuff he was teaching, and argued with him and questioned him. And so as a smart ass, like, he turned around to me. No, so he turned around to me and said, you're such a smart ass, saying whatever, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Why don't you get up here and why don't you teach the class? This is the subject we're doing. And as it turns out, it was databases, like relational databases and all sorts of stuff like that. And he didn't realize like that was my thing at the time, right? I've been doing it for years. And he goes, why don't you get up here and teach this class? And I went, okay. I taught the whole 3-month subject at class. He'd come in every day, he'd sit there, and at the end of it, he didn't give me any type of feedback. He didn't, thank me. He didn't do any. He just waited for me to just trip up or whatever, and I didn't. Yeah. And it was hilarious.
That's amazing.
Got on well with him. Like, his name was Dr. Slade, and he hated me. And
I was going to say, in a way, that sounds like he respected you quite a bit to allow you to have that kind of not control, but like authority in the classroom almost.
I don't know. There was only like 6 people in the class. Like, computer classes were very not popular still back then. And I think he was just trying to make me make a fool of myself, but I don't think I did. Anyway,
fair enough.
Yeah, I moved on to so then I had to decide what I want to do with uni. I got into digital technology, and robot. It was called digital technology and robotics was the name of the course. Okay. So for me, that means it's going to be learning about digital electronics and robotics, and software, right? So it turns out 2/3 of the course for the first 2 years is pure mathematics, and the whole analog side of electronics. Like, we did a little bit of digital, Carno maps and other stuff like that, but everything else was just full on maths and calculus and stuff. And I was angry because that's not what the name of the course was. Yeah. I didn't want to do it, and I was terrible at it, and it required studying. So it turns out, as many of my community know, I've got ADHD, which I didn't know back then. Okay. So obviously had it my whole life. I was only diagnosed a few years ago. That's a funny story. I'll go on if you want to.
I'll talk about it later if that's okay.
Looking back, like, my refusal to do analog electronics and all the maths and everything else at uni, and even at high school, like doing the thing I was interested in and ignoring the subjects I wasn't, makes total sense now. it was my ADHD. Like,
yeah, it's not a sort of a conscious "I won't" stubbornness. It was just that you weren't interested, therefore it almost didn't exist. Almost, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or it existed, but I didn't care of the repercussions.
Yeah, yeah.
Which just boggled the teachers and boggled my parents. But it was what it was. But on the things I was interested in, I would excel.
Yep.
So it was kind of the same with university. Like I'd go and, in a programming class at uni, we had to, like everyone was being taught we were programming in Pascal for the first year, which was pretty funny. Really liked Pascal as a language. I wish that it was still around. But anyway, so like we had to write this thing where kind of like a mini menu system thing where you could enter your name or you could enter like a to-do list or whatever else. And so everyone's learning how to write this thing. And I went home and wrote same thing, but with a graphical user interface with a mouse and buttons. You click on it, and went to school and presented it. And the teacher looked at me and said, "What the hell are you doing in this class?"
Failed. Yeah.
Right. So like I did everything to the nth degree if I was interested in it, and completely ignored everything else. Like it didn't exist. So I ended up not completing that course. I dropped out after the end of my first year because I couldn't do the maths. And had a chat with the person in charge of the course, and they said, "Look, you got to do it. It's part of the course. We can't just let you keep going through the course and only doing the subjects you want to do." So I said, "Okay," and I was still programming, earning money, and so I thought, "Stuff it, I'm just going to keep doing that." And ended up getting a job at a computer company.
So just to clarify, sorry, roll back a bit. You effectively sort of stopped uni and got into work instead.
Yeah. I just thought Well, I was already working and I was already earning money
during uni. Okay, got you.
During uni and high school, which makes it really hard to motivate yourself to go to lectures.
Justify,
stuff when I can go to this lecture, or I could go and earn some money. I could go do 3 hours of programming and earn, some good money. So I just, again, my ADHD would, prove me to go that way. So I found myself in the workforce. Worked for some computer companies, selling computers, fixing computers and stuff. And then started doing less programming over time and just more like building computers and hardware and maintaining. Got into networks, Novell, NetWare, and other stuff. And then ended up moving to, I moved to Sydney and I got a job with IBM Global Services.
Okay.
Started off doing computer support, but ended up doing support in the network team, and then was working on the networks in the network team, and then doing local area networks and wider area network stuff.
Okay, and that was what, designing systems, or was it supporting the IBM customer base, or what was going on there?
So their global services, they used to outsource to other companies, but it was mass. It wasn't like you'd outsource a couple of people to just do some contract work with this company. So we were working with MLCC, which is a very large investment firm, superannuation type company. Okay. I think they're global, whatever. So like they had this, 9-story building where there was like 100 people on every floor. And so like the global services team had 3 of the floors. Wow. Like it wasn't a few people. There were like 150 staff sitting there doing all the IT, everything from support to writing all their software to running all the networks. Like it was this massive thing. That's what IBM used to do at the time. They'd go in and partner with other companies, and it was called their global. Was it? Oh, I can't remember what they called themselves. So anyway, so I was doing that. So I was running the networks, and I was making sure that the servers are up and making sure everything was talking to the wide area network stuff, and everything from maintaining all the backups and make sure all the machines were backed up every night to updating all the server software to trying to fix issues with user accounts to adding more hardware and infrastructure rolling out and redundancy and all that stuff. Eventually moved into, which I hated because they spent no money on their technology, right? Making a fortune as a company, but the machines we were using, we're running like OS2 Warp, IBM's server software at the time, on these machines that like were just like 10 years prior, Like it was just so slow, and things would fall over all the time, and hard drives would go down and stuff. And put a budget request in for some new kit, and nope, can't have it. The next quarter, or it was really frustrating.
Yeah.
Like it was really rewarding in terms of being able to keep it up just on like literally band-aids, right? Like that was a rewarding thing, but it beats you down after a while.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to the UK for a year with the plan on getting a job at IBM there. And so I got introduced to my boss locally to there and whatever else, and got there and went and did the interview. It was an amazing place. And then we got to the discussion about what the salary was. And like it was like half, it was less than half what I'd been earning, and half, like I had some friends that also gone to the UK and done IT work and stuff. And like back then it was, like going from Australia or South Africa or New Zealand to the UK and working in the IT sector, you could earn really, really good money. Like it was incredible. And back then the pound was like 3.5 to 1 or something for the Australian dollar, and you get paid in pounds, right? So like I was literally earning triple. Should have been earning triple, but IBM's, because they knew what I was getting paid back in Australia, so they offered me comparable rate, but in pounds. I'm going, what the? So I ended up not taking that. Worked for some other companies there, contracted for about a year and a half. Earned some money, went traveling.
So what was the plan with the move to the UK? Was it to explore another avenue of inside IBM, or was it kind of a change of scenery? Did something else story here?
ADHD, didn't know it at the time.
But,
let's go on a new adventure.
Change something.
Change something that's big.
Okay.
Let's go do it. And let's go indefinitely. Like, what does indefinitely mean? There's no commitment to indefinitely. That means you can just pack up and leave at any time. Classic ADHD. Stayed there for like a year, like working and doing short traveling on weekends and stuff, and then thought, let's just go travel around Europe. We did that. Suddenly found myself back in Melbourne. So I went to work for another big company, Credit Suisse, doing the same thing, LAN, WAN stuff, thinking it'd be different, but it wasn't. Here's a company like I worked on the same floor as all of their Forex and trading teams, right? Like I don't know how many people were sitting there that were making themselves and their customers billions of dollars a year, right? Couldn't even get like $10,000 to upgrade a server. Like it was infuriating. So I thought it'd get better, but it wasn't. Stuck it out for about a year or so, and then I heard from a friend of mine from school that he'd started an animation company.
Okay.
Like computer animation. And so I had been chatting with him, whatever, and he said to me, why don't you come and work for me for free and I'll teach you. Right. I've been playing with some software called Povray for a couple of years, which is it's a 3D, less animation, but a 3D software, but you have to script everything, right? And then run it and sit there, and it took forever to scan line to build this 3D image. Did some 3D stuff on the Amiga back in the day, and whatever, like Sculpt 3D, whatever. So I really liked the visual side. I was quite interested in the art side of things as well. So I turned around to my wife at the time. I said, I'm going to quit my job. And I was earning like $120,000 a year, $130,000 a year. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go work for this guy for free to learn how to do animation. Okay. That didn't go down very well.
I was going to say, I'm sure that went down well. Yeah.
But I did it. And it wasn't 6 months. It was a much shorter period of time. Before I was earning money, but I started doing that, and I was quite interested in it. It was great. It was a new adventure, new technology, new things to learn, feeding the ADHD. Had a bit of falling out with them. It was like I brought my own machine in to work, right? Because it's what you did back in the day. Like my computer set up my way, I wanted to run it or whatever. And they were really busy, so they asked me if I could leave my machine there. They could render on it overnight. And it was like one night turned into 2 nights and turned into 5 nights and it turned into 2 weeks. And I'm going, I want to take my computer home. Like I want to do stuff. Oh, you can't take your computer home. Like if you take your computer home, we're not going to be able to get this job rendered.
That's
I'm thinking,
now, yeah.
buy more computers. Like it's my computer. I cracked the shit. And we had a big fight. I unplugged my computer and took it home, and that was it with them. And I thought, I'm going to start my own animation company. So
well, this was how long? This was, not 6 months worth of learning followed by a year or.
No, so there was about a year with them.
Yeah.
Or maybe a bit less than a year, maybe 11 months, 10 months.
Okay.
But how hard could it be? So,
well done.
Yeah, and so I did. I started an animation company, and it was just me for a little while, and then I contacted some people for small jobs, and suddenly, 2 or 3 years later, I had 14 or 15 staff, and we were doing. I did it for about 6 or 7 years. We did effects for some TV shows and films locally, and then lots of TV commercials and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's quite successful as a small boutique animation studio. So, and then I, got a bit tired of that. So I thought, let's start making games. So one day I pivoted and said to my staff, I'm going to start making games. Like Unity just came out, very early version of the Unity game engine.
So when you say animation and then the pivot to games, was that actually a big change? Was that sort of a whole set of different tools, or is actually kind of working in the same software? It's just you're not producing an animation now. You're actually producing something more interactive. Is that kind of where we are?
Well, sure, except with there was no coding involved with producing animation and visual effects. It was all
keyframes and stuff.
Yeah. So there was definitely that whole coding thing, but I could code. Like that what didn't scare me, and whatever. Sure, I had to, had to learn a new engine, a game engine, which at the time, as like Unity, was only available for the Mac, and it was version 1.0. It was really flashy and whatever. And I had to learn, a new scripting language and whatever. But it was fun. It was exciting. We could do the visual side. We could build the game assets, art assets. They were just lower res versions of what we were doing anyway. I had all the tools and infrastructure to do that. So a few people stayed on with me to do that. And I let go of everyone else, and we started making games and selling them, and $20 a game here and there. And I think in the first year, probably only sold about $20,000 or $30,000 worth of games, but it was something, right? And then it suddenly started building up from there, and then it was kind of doing okay. It was supporting like myself and 2 other people, and I decided though that I wanted to keep making games, but I wanted to just do it myself. I wanted to work by myself. I wanted to move home, set myself up at home, and I just wanted to, it was kind of like a mini change. Like I wanted to keep making games at the time, but I didn't want to have the dependencies of an office and staff or whatever. So I moved home, making my own games for a while, and then ended up selling that company to a bigger games company. Who did console-based stuff. So I was doing, iPhone and Mac PC back then, and they were doing console. So they bought half the company under the guise of, we can help you grow, and we'll give you resources. They wanted to get into the space I was in, and I wanted to get in the space they were in. Actually, turns out I didn't. But anyway, and so it seemed like a good thing. I knew some people there and whatever. But we did the transition, and then over this 6 or 7 months, they destroyed my company. They just, didn't give me the things they were supposed to, and then, pulled the plug on games we've been working on, they were about to release, and it was really frustrating. So I watched it all crumble down. I was very unhappy at the time. So while that was all happening, I started tinkering on my own games at home separately. Finally convinced them to buy me out and gone. So I left there, and then took the games I was working on at home, and released one, and it was like a worldwide hit. And suddenly I was back making games again with my own company again.
Amazing.
But swore I'd never sell again, but found myself hiring staff again and whatever, but at home. So I had my home office, which I could comfortably fit a few people in. It was like a converted garage. And so I had another coder and an art guy, and we were making games, and we were doing really well. When we launched on Steam, and we made console games, and we did some really cool stuff.
Awesome. Is
Very
there anything you're
proud.
particularly proud of you'd like to brag about?
Well, most of the games no one's really going to have heard of.
Okay.
My biggest game that I released was called CubeMen and CubeMen 2, which was on launched originally on iOS, on iPad, and obviously desktop and stuff. It was the first game I got on Steam. So Steam was like I got on Steam just while it was still the golden platform to get on. Like if you got the game on Steam, you were made.
Right.
Which eventually that stopped after they started letting more on and diluted everything. So that was I was very lucky that I got in just in time on that. But I'd been trying to get my games on Steam for ages, and they knock back, not interested. Wouldn't even talk to me. Wouldn't even open a dialogue with me.
Right.
But when they saw CubeMen, they went, "Yep," and bang, and did really well. Probably the game I'm most proud of is a game called Fight the Dragon, which was an RPG, but it came with a complete construction kit, full 3D thing where all the games, apart from the ones like 5 or 6 levels re-released with the game, all the game that you played was user-generated content. And it was a multiplayer game. You could play split screen, or you could play up to 4 players. Multiplayer, you could go doing it together, and everything you played was a complete. It wasn't just a level someone made. They could script complete stories, and they had, they could do like dialogue and stuff and quests and everything else. It was this full-on thing that 3 of us built it. We invested years and years of time building this thing, and so much money. Like it cost me to develop this thing, but it did fairly well. Like it didn't do as well as it wasn't like a breakout hit, but it almost passed the $2 million mark, in terms of sales over its lifetime. I was most proud of that because we had 50 or 60,000 user-generated levels. I mean, sure, some levels were shit, and just levels to try to get equipment and stuff. But people invested tens of hours or hundreds of hours designing full-on campaigns in this thing for other people to play.
That's amazing.
Watching people do stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, probably the most well-known game that we made though was Pac-Man 256, which was the reinvention of Pac-Man. We did it with Crossy Roads guys with Matt and Andy, which I knew before they'd done Crossy Road. So it was like a Crossy Road style version of Pac-Man, Endless Pac-Man, which did really well. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. So that was games. Anything else much happen in between then and now?
Well, so one day I decided that I don't want to make games anymore.
Okay.
This happened over a while though, and it wasn't prompted by my lack of interest in games. It was prompted by the whole shift of the App Store on like iOS App Store and even Android and all those. It was all a race to the bottom. A race to $1 apps or a race to free apps. It wasn't the game developers that did that. It was the customer base, but the game developers allowed it to happen by doing it. You know what I mean? Like, if all the game developers out there would have stuck firm and said, nope, we're not doing free-to-play games. We're only doing, our games are $20. We're not changing the price. Then it would have stayed. But everyone tried to get on the, need to get 1 million downloads. Well, you get 1 million downloads by making your game free, right?
And then to make it free, you've got to put ads in, that kind of thing as well.
That's right. And so then it turned out that the game, the entertainment in the game and the quality of the assets and how well thought out the game was completely secondary to user retention, user acquisition, and how to get them to click that first damn ad and how to keep them clicking ads, right? And it became an analytics thing where the actual game idea and the art and the enjoyment was secondary. And we went through that process. Like I lasted about another year and a bit playing in that space. Made some games that were fairly successful, but it was a grind. Like it was demoralizing. So I just had enough. I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to, it was really expensive at that stage to make a game. Like if we were going to make a new game that was going to be released free to play with ads and blah, blah, whatever else, I'd have to be prepared to spend between, $500,000 and $1 million developing it.
Wow.
Right. To really give it the chance to break out. because the people that spent $5,000 making a game that suddenly made $10 million, that was like 1 in a billion chance. Like that was everything that aligned to make that
super lucky. Yeah,
had nothing to do with that person or the game. It was something else, right? And you couldn't rely on that. So I just had enough, and so I said to my staff again one day. I said, "Guys, it's not you, it's me. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore, and because I can't do it anymore, you guys don't have a job anymore." Like I paid them out like a month each or something, and like, I'm really sorry. Like I had to just rip the Band-Aid off, pull the plug, because I was just spending money on stuff that I didn't want to release. Like, you know what I mean? It was pointless. So I kind of did nothing for a while, which was okay. I could afford to do nothing for a while. Watched a lot of YouTube, found a lot of electronics YouTube channels.
Okay. Should we just pause there for a second? I think Andy Mouse 123 has said that Pack 256 was nominated for an award. Is that right?
Won awards, yeah. It was
fantastic.
A lot of the games won awards. I think we ended up. So my game company was called Three Sprockets, and as a studio, we won several like Australian awards.
Right.
And a lot of our games won awards like internationally and locally.
Amazing.
Like,
well done.
Dragon won the GDC Best Game Award at like GDC's Game Developer Conference in the States. Cuban won a whole bunch of awards, and Pac-Man 256 won some awards and probably nominated for more. Yeah, it was that's what I said, like my second incarnation of the games stuff was quite rewarding. We built some really good games that people really enjoyed and that we were really proud of. We didn't do the race to the bottom type stuff, and we had no choice at the end. So yeah, it was good. It was good.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks,
so it's
squeak.
Yeah. so back to your downtime, your YouTube, etc.
Yeah, so I was watching YouTube. I was watching electronics videos, and I was watching electronics unbox, like mailbag videos. Like Julian Illett, hope I got his name one first, and Brian Locke and David Watts and Bit Looney. Like these people are who I'm friends with, a lot of them now, but they're people that I watched YouTube, and I found myself like totally engaged with watching the YouTube stuff on electronics and thinking to myself, maybe it's time to look at electronics again. Like everyone's playing with electronics, they're playing with microcontrollers, they're doing stuff, but I don't see anyone having to deal with any maths. No one's sitting there writing out formulas to do stuff. They're just grabbing these things and plugging them in and writing some code, and they're working. I'm going, whoa! So I started tinkering. I bought myself some Arduino clone stuff from overseas and even locally, and I went and did a one-day course, a local company here called Little Bird Electronics in Sydney. They were running like one-day Arduino courses using some SparkFun boards.
Right.
And so like I bought that kit and I did the course. I remember it was like $300 something. I think to myself, why am I spending $300 to like, but it was like a quick start, like to really get myself whatever. And then I didn't spend long like wiring up stuff and coding things, because like I almost immediately went to, no, I need to put this on my own PCB. Like, it never occurred to me that even back then that like designing a PCB was hard or challenging, and laying all this stuff out on a PCB would be any harder than anything I've ever done. Like I spent my whole life solving problems, whether it was at a network level, whether it was at making games, whether it was VFX pipelines. Like it was that's what I did. Like I took something that was challenging and worked out how to do it and did it, right? And so it never occurred to me that what I was doing was in any way unusual for someone who had just started working with electronics. And so I made my own module for a board, and then I thought, why do I have like this module piece of, why do I have this and this, and I still have to connect them? I'm just going to put it all together, and I'm another board. Of course, my first board didn't work. My second board didn't work. Learned a lot, ripped up traces, destroyed the boards trying to assemble them, all the usual stuff that you do, but figured that was just part of the learning process. And then all of a sudden, I think it was my third revision, I had these boards and they worked, and like a powered it up and had a SAMD21 on it, and it had an RTC on there with battery backup. It had a connected to a screen, SPI screen, and I was building a time timer for my kids, like something that for ADHD and autism, like it's basically a timer that shows a visual timer how long you have left.
Yep.
It's beep beep beep. It's this red dial that turns around. You could buy mechanical ones for a really good price, but I had to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to designing one that ran off a battery electronically. The battery had to be charged every 3 hours because the screen just chewed off the thing. Yeah. Anybody else remembers the Hot Wheels? Yeah, that came a bit later. So yeah, suddenly I was building PCBs, and I just continued to design and build PCBs. It never occurred to me that was something that people normally did much later, or not all. Right?
Okay. So I was just going to say that Steph Piper, hey Steph, mentioned that she did the same course.
Yeah, they were doing courses like everywhere. Like you had to wait for them to come to your area, but like different states or whatever. But they were, it was really good. Like every couple of months they were like back in Melbourne, and you could do a course. And I think they had some more advanced ones as well. But by that point in time, I was beyond wiring stuff up on a breadboard. I wanted to build PCBs. Like for me, it was the challenge of PCBs, and pushing myself to learn. And although I didn't spend as much time doing the software side as I should have back then, like really understanding the lower level MCU stuff, but I already knew how to do software. Like to me, that was just a means to an end.
Yeah, sure.
Hardware knowledge.
Okay. So when did you become Unexpected Maker? How did that start? And what about your first product as well?
So I started a YouTube channel just before it became pointless to create a YouTube channel. Like I created the YouTube channel and got everything ready to go, and like 4 days later they implemented that 1,000 subs, 4,000 hours before you can start monetizing thing. Like it was all just, I didn't do it to monetize, but I did it. So I thought to myself, you know what? I like this YouTube format thing. And I was really engaged watching people's videos, and I was learning heaps from it. And I had some things I was working on that I wanted to share, right? It's a great medium to share. So I'm going to start a YouTube channel. And there's a story behind the name Unexpected Maker, which I'm happy to talk about in a sec. So I started doing that, and I said to myself incorrectly, I didn't know anything about my ADHD at the time. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm doing the YouTube thing as a motivator to keep doing more projects. Like if I set myself this goal where I have to make a project that I can show on the video, and I have to release a video, then I have to work on projects, right?
I can't help but admit to feeling. Can't help to admit to feeling very, very familiar with that mindset.
a lot of people do, but it turns out for me, not releasing a video for months and months and months is okay because of that project, right? But anyway, it made sense in my head at the time, and so I started working on stuff and making videos and whatever. And then I was enjoying making videos at the time. They weren't very good, and I started doing some live streaming, and that was. I actually enjoyed that more. Like I've been live streaming. I mean, I've missed some days here and there from sickness or traveling, whatever, but I've pretty much been live streaming consistently on a Wednesday morning for years and years now, like every week.
Apologies for interrupting your schedule. Thank you for joining me.
Wednesday, it's fine. So like, I just love the engagement with the community. Like there's such an amazing, I mean, they're not my community because they're other people's community as well. I say my community. They're not mine specifically, but it's such an amazing group of people in the community that I get to engage with and learn from, and I've made some lifelong friends from there and stuff, and it's been really good. And so I think the first product I made, I wasn't intending to start a hardware business at the time. Tuesday, right? I live in the future, right? So it's pretty much Tuesday for everyone else. I wasn't planning on making products. I needed to build something that could sustain. Like I've got a family. I've got a young family, mortgage. Like I couldn't.
So this was a plan then. It was a plan to make this into your job effectively.
The YouTube stuff was
okay.
right? Because this was just, I didn't know it was the end of the time, but this was just at the end of people making good money on YouTube, right? And so I thought that maybe there was an opportunity there. Like I had a runway. I didn't, it wasn't like I had to solve this in 6 months, and so I figured I had time to build up a channel and whatever else and see how it goes, right? But YouTube and the new algorithm pretty much put an end to that, and the new rules put an end to that very quickly. But that was okay. I still had time, and I was just playing. I was learning, right? And I think the first product I made was my Neo 7 segment, which I don't have one up here now. It's a 7-segment display with RGB LEDs, which I designed on a video, showed how I designed it, like schematic and PCB layout, whatever. I got them made and whatever. And I started selling those on, I think it was on Tindy at the time, and sold a few hundred, all up over a few months and stuff. And okay, that's pretty cool. What's next? And so I started tinkering with things and making things and, showing everyone my journey along the way, like being very open about it all and stuff. And then I got challenged by Matt Trentini, who's in the MicroPython community, he goes, I bet you can't make a really, really small ESP32 board. Like a full-featured board that, for MicroPython, that can run MicroPython well. And I go, oh, really? He goes, I know what you're doing there, Matt. I can see what you're doing. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen, right? No, I'm not taking the bait. Of course. Did I take the bait? Yes, I did. I designed a board, and I went, here you go. And I showed it to him. He goes, wow, that's really cool. I bet you can't make it smaller.
There you go. Yeah.
So it was his fault with my fetish for making things small. So I did. And I was, again, sharing this on the channel and stuff, and eventually got my final prototype of the board and showed it on a video and whatever. And some people started saying, hey, I'd buy one of those if you make one. I'd buy one of those if you make one. I'm thinking, oh, okay, do I really want to be making this? It started off as a challenge and learning. Yeah. And this was over quite a long period of time, like a 6 or 7 month period of time. Like I wasn't rushing to make a product out of it. I was just, it was really pushing the boundaries of my skills at the time. Like looking back now, it's like, like I do way more complex stuff now, but back then it was really challenging. So it was more of a learning thing. But I thought, you know what? I might contact Crowd Supply and do a crowdfunding campaign. Back then, Kickstarter had that really bad rap about things not being delivered. There's no point doing a Kickstarter, and it wasn't really electronics focused or whatever. Crowd Supply were electronics focused, and so I had a chat with them. They really liked it, whatever else. I thought, you know what? Okay, I'm going to do this. How many could I possibly sell? Like it's, everyone's buying cheap ESP32 boards from China, $5 boards. I'm going to sell these things for $20 US each, right? I'll be lucky if I sell a couple of hundred of them. That's okay. Be fun. And I'll hand assemble them all. I liked hand assembling, right? I was pretty fast at it. I enjoyed it. I found it therapeutic. I'm going to hand assemble them all. Oh, boy. The crowdfunding campaign launched, and I ended up, I think it was 1,500 and something boards were ordered.
Wow.
Which is
all hand assembled, I trust.
Sorry?
All hand assembled, I trust.
No. Well, I'd already started hand assembling. I thought I'd get ahead of the game, right? I'd already built like 50, right? I was going to get ahead of the game. So all of a sudden I found myself in a situation where I needed to build a lot of them, but I didn't want to go to like a contract manufacturer to do it at the time. Like it was anyway, like I got quotes from CMs and stuff overseas, and it was going to be too difficult to do. Had to invest in too many components, like reels of components when I didn't need reels of components to make it cost effective and whatever else, blah, blah, blah. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go and buy a desktop pick and place machine just to get these boards built, right? So I ordered this desktop pick and place machine, which I got plenty of videos on my channel about trying to get it working and stuff. It was pretty funny. And I ended up making them all, but there was a spanner that got thrown in the works. So Crowd Supply had this thing where if the campaign launches and it's successful, then they will often buy stock to sell on this shop, right?
Yep.
And they had recently just got bought out by Mauser. I think I was one of the first campaigns to launch post the Mauser purchase. And so Mauser would also stock on their. Mauser did the fulfillment for Crowd Supply, and they would also stock, right? And so I hadn't even finished the 1,500, and Crowd Supply put in an order for 2,000 boards. So 3,500 boards. I just bought all the components to get the first lot done, and had to run out and buy all the components to get the second lot done. And that started my journey into the craziness of, component procurement and like juggling, all that type of stuff with manufacturing, and then suddenly, having to reflow and test them. There's one thing to test 200 boards. You can do that by hand, manually. You can't do that on thousands of boards.
Yep.
And that started my journey into my love of pick and place machines. I'm on my 4th now, and I'm about to move to my 5th.
Okay.
And my need to go ever smaller in manufacturing, and my need to go faster. And anyway, it's led me on this crazy journey that puts me where I am here now, which is I don't know how many boards. I stopped counting a while ago. People ask me all the time, how many boards have you built? I don't know. I used to count them by counting how many empty reels I had of ESP32 chips. I used to keep them all.
Okay, yeah.
And it got to the point one day where I had to throw them all out, like because the 13-inch reels.
Too many.
So they come in reels. Oops, they come in reels like this, right?
Yep.
And I literally had piles on my floor of these empty plastic reels, right? And like you walk past and you knock one, and they all just slide. It was terrible. You can't put them in boxes; they're the wrong size.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have to be close, if not over 100,000 boards I've built now. Built and shipped 100,000 boards.
Amazing.
Which is insane. Like I still can't believe it. I still don't understand why. I mean, I take a lot of care in what I manufacture and what I ship, from the packaging to the finish of the board to the cosmetic layout of the board. Like it's my ADHD. Like it's if I look at something and if I'm not pleased with it, I can't ship it, right? Which is the worst possible thing, worst level of requirement for someone to have in the electronics production thing, right? When you're competing with companies out there that are selling boards for half the price. But I'm making stuff and people are buying stuff and using them, and I occasionally get the disgruntled customer, sure. All good, that happens. You can't please everyone, but the community, people who buy my stuff and use them in projects, and the stuff they're doing with them it's amazing. It's like it's more rewarding than designing and having a finished product is the seeing what people do with it.
Yeah.
The making the product is just like Groundhog Day. Like it honestly is. It's just the most repetitive, boring process. Honestly, doesn't matter what equipment you buy and how fancy your pick and place machine is. It's just this hamster wheel thing, making stuff, right? But it's what people do with it once it's in their hands. That's pretty amazing. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah, I love seeing that as well. Even though I've had no input on design or anything, I love seeing the things that people get up to. It's awesome.
Yeah. The creativity in
because
there's absolute creativity in electronics. Like people don't think of it that way generally, but not just the design of something can be creative, but the use of it can be creative, and the way it's used, the application, the implementation can be totally creative, and it's just it's awesome, and so that people inspire me based on stuff that they do with my boards that gives me ideas to make stuff that might make their life easier or more interesting. It's really good.
Awesome. Got a comment from Liz, Blitz City DIY. Hey Liz, it's been amazing to see how much your business has grown since starting a channel and the crowd supply campaign. There you go.
Thanks, Liz. Liz was one of the very first people. I started watching on YouTube. She does amazing stuff. I mean, we've all got what's been great is there's a whole bunch of I still call myself a maker. A whole bunch of makers, electronic enthusiasts, whatever, on YouTube not just on YouTube, but primarily, I guess, on YouTube that have their own channels that we've all kind of shared this journey together with, like I was the little fledgling newbie back then when they were all established. Even if they were only small, they were still established, right? Back then, if someone had 1,000 subs or 2,000 subs and they were posting regularly, like that was huge because I couldn't get past the 100 subs, right? It was and these people are still there, and I'm still, I get to watch Liz's videos. She just did a whole bunch on different boards that she put together. She's doing awesome stuff with music and MIDI and whatever, and she's had her own journey on creating PCBs that sometimes work, sometimes don't. And bodge wire, we all bodge wire stuff. It's been awesome watching everyone's progress and stuff.
Cool. So can we come to your production line? Because I think this is a new thing for you. You finally got an end-to-end production line. Is that right?
I only have an end-to-end, as in fully automated, which turns out to not have been a smart decision.
Okay, interesting.
But that's always been my aim. So, I mean, obviously, I started off with just a pick and place machine with a separate oven, and then eventually moved to a pick and place machine with an oven in line with a conveyor. And that was kind of a little bit of automation. And then I ran out of space at home. I needed to move out. It was like I was driving my family nuts, and it was driving me nuts. And so I probably should have moved out like a year or a year and a half earlier than what I did. Like I was ready to business-wise, but I wasn't ready to mentally. Like it was this thing that transitioned me from I'm still doing this as a hobby, which was ridiculous for how many boards I was shipping, to I need to, suddenly have expenses like, rent and overheads and whatever else. But I moved with the plan of having enough space to automate my line. Turns out I didn't get a space big enough. I regret getting a 2-story place. I should have got a larger single-story place.
Okay.
Anyway, you live and learn. But I finally managed to get my machine fully automated from start to finish. The problem with a fully automated machine, because before that, when I'm running like a production run, let's say I had to do, 500 boards or 1,000 boards on a run, I'd be down there and I'm constantly hand pasting panels and feeding them into the pick and place machine and
trying to keep up with the machines.
Oven the other end, quickly grab it before it type thing. I mean, there was a catcher for it, but you couldn't have more than 2 boards go into the catcher at once. And so it was very much had to be standing watching it all the time. But look, it worked. I produced stacks of boards that way. But my plan was to be able to have it automatically load the PCBs into a stencil printer, print the piece of, like, put paste on them, pick and place them, reflow them, and restack them at the end. So I can walk up and grab a stack that are done and go and inspect them and do what I need to do, which I have done many times since I got all this stuff in. Unfortunately, my pick and place machine has a mind of its own.
Okay.
And so at any time during a production run, it can stuff up and start just spraying shit all over, spraying parts all over the board, putting them in the wrong place, dropping parts, solenoids stop working on the vacuum. It's been infuriating nightmare. And so what would happen is I'd run the first panel and check it before it goes through. Then I'd go, I better check the second panel, I'd go, okay, these are all fine. I'm going to now run another 15 panels or 20 panels, and I walk away. And for the first time since I've started, I've been able to sit up here, for instance, for like 2 hours straight and do other work and not have to manually go down and feed my machine. It's been awesome until you go and take the stack afterwards and you look, and the middle of the stack are all destroyed.
Oh.
And they're recoverable, but I end up spending 2 or 3 days fixing them.
Not ideal.
That's yeah.
So is this sort of learning gremlins in the machine type thing, or is this something that you've figured out?
There's something faulty with the machine that I've never been able to get them to fix or to identify the cause, or it's been an ongoing thing.
Okay.
And it's actually a lot of my community know about this. It's actually pushed me to the limit. And I think today is the day that I'm going to buy a new pick and place machine and move out of the whole Chinese pick and place machine space, move into the other world, which is because I spent the last 2 days fixing boards that my pick and place machine. The problem is when you're working at 0402, there's no markings on the components, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you can't like stick a DMM on a cap, 0402 cap, and measure what its value is. So as soon as it starts making mistakes, you can't trust any part that's on the board. And so you got to rip them all off and redo them. And parts are so expensive still. Like, you know, it's getting better with the part shortage, but some of my components that I'm placed at the moment are, you know, are costing me 3 or 4 times what they used to cost me still. And I can't afford to just throw the boards out. Like we can't. And there's nothing wrong with the boards. I just have to sit there and fix them a panel at a time by hand. So like I built 180 boards yesterday, fully automated. Not yesterday. What day is today? Wednesday. On Sunday. And then had to hand fix 65 of them. And that 65 now, I've actually got some left. I've got 20 left I still have to fix. It's taking me more than 2 days to fix them all.
Yeah. That kind of failure rate is way too high as well, isn't it?
Yeah. But there are days where it's perfect and there won't be a problem. And I can build 500 boards, no issue. But there are days where it stuffs up and you don't know. It doesn't error, it doesn't beep. There's nothing. It just, you think everything's working fine, but it's not. And so I've now stopped fully automating and I'm back to feeding it and checking every panel as it comes out, which is just, it's infuriating because I've spent all this money to automate and I can't. And I can't ever trust my machine. So I'm about to pull the plug and move up to the next level of machine, which I don't want to do. I've been fighting tooth and nail not to do it. But
it's very frustrating and sorry to hear you're going through that.
But that's okay. Like that's you know, it's one of the challenges of I guess of what I'm trying to do. And you know, I know there are plenty of people out there that are using Chinese machines that have no problems.
Yeah.
All good. Like, you know, yeah, I'm just, is what it is, but that's okay. Onwards and upwards.
And Andy Mouse has asked us what machine it is that you're having the problems with.
The one I'm having a problem with? No, I think he's asking what machine I'm buying.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying yet. It'll be a surprise for everyone.
Fair enough.
I think today I'm going to put the order in. So, and I need to because I got something new that I want to build, and there's no way I can build this on this machine if it because it's a double-sided board, and if I can't fix it if it makes a mistake. I can't rework the double-sided board because I can't heat one side to fix it when there's parts on the other side.
Got you.
Especially when the parts on the other side are little tiny, hundreds and hundreds of little tiny LEDs that are plastic and they'll melt. So, yeah.
Very good. Yes. So, look. Do you want to talk about this? Let's make you big. Hold it up again. Show it off.
Yeah. So this is my bling board. My community I actually built this on stream. But I've been playing around with some demo code. So I've got different FFT examples here. That's bright. So I got different versions of like just
and this is responding to us, your voice, and so it's got a microphone on there and things as well.
So it's got a digital microphone. So it's an ESP32. It's back to front there on the back. It's got a digital microphone over there. It's got battery charging, and for battery, it's got a SD card slot. It's got an RTC, like a real-time clock on there with battery backup power for that. It's got 4 user buttons. It's basically an everything and the kitchen sink type board, but it's also got a 40x8 RGB matrix on it. And massive. These are 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter RGB LEDs. They're tiny, really, really small. And so I've just been playing around with different demos of, hey, Jason. Sure. Well, I got to be able to manufacture them, right? And there's no way I can do this on that machine. Like these LEDs are really expensive. They're brand new. Like 1 by 1 millimeter is just pretty insane.
Yeah.
And like in terms of a BOM cost, those LEDs are worth like more than a third of the entire cost of all the parts on the board. And they'd get destroyed if I had to rework any part on this board. So
Yeah,
I need reliability.
Sure. So what are the LEDs? Are they sort of a 2D array like a Hub 75 type panel, or is it?
No, they're individually addressable. So they're
Okay.
like a NeoPixel style.
Yeah.
I can't do a Hub 75 style on this because this amount of ICs I need to put on the back, like level shifters and stuff, like it is more than the space I've got. So this whole thing is only 99 millimeters long by 22 millimeters high, and it's got 320 RGB LEDs on the front.
Very nice.
Like, it's a I call it it's a fire starter. It's a heater. Like it gets quite hot. So like that's only at like 3% brightness on the LEDs, 4% brightness.
Crazy, isn't it? The LED brightness these days.
It's really, really nice diffusers on them, really cool. So and the camera blows it out quite a lot, but it's so I've just been playing around with different demo code of that.
Yeah, very cool.
How was that? To finish assembling 128 of those new 1mm drizzle into a 1-inch circle. Oh, that's awesome. When can I get that? So I can take my money, Jason.
I was thinking a similar thing. Yeah,
Jason does amazing stuff.
Very cool. Worked on the first try. Imagine that. There you go. Yeah.
Very cool.
Cool. So there's one other thing that I think you might be willing to talk about and people might find quite interesting. And that's your ADHD. Is that something you're okay to talk about?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So this is something that you've found out relatively recently and had a proper diagnosis for.
Yeah. So
can you just sort of line up your discovery and your realization and all that kind of thing?
Sure. So my kids were diagnosed 3-4 years ago now. My wife's on here. You go. Yaz is my wife. She's she's okay talking about it. So my kids were diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and the ADHD side was interesting because their traits were something that, like, both my wife and I looked at and went, "Wow, these things look really, really familiar. Like these are ringing true." My wife actually went and got diagnosed first.
Okay.
And ADHD, absolutely. And then I went and got a diagnosis. We both went for different reasons, I think, but I had my diagnosis, and absolutely, ADHD. And it's interesting for me because all the decisions I've made in my life, I've had really valid explanations for them all, right? But it turns out most of them were just driven by my impulsivity and I'm done with that. I've moved on. It's my ADHD, like 100%. I mean, other reasons might still be valid. They might have been part of the internal decision-making process. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, when I, jump from one thing to the next thing, it's impulsivity, right? Which is just, it's a key factor of ADHD. So for me, like, I've done lots of things. I had a animation studio. I had 2 game studios. I'm now doing hardware manufacturing, which I had not planned to do. I was contracting and working and writing code for people when I was at high school instead of doing my schoolwork. Like, all those things, they looking back, they were driven by this. And I wish I would have known about my ADHD earlier. Just, it would have helped me understand some of the decisions I made. I don't know if I would have done many things differently. I don't know if I would have been able to do many things differently, right? Because knowing about, like, having a diagnosis doesn't change the way your brain works, right?
Yeah, and it's not a fix or anything.
That's right. And it doesn't necessarily give you the ability to change your reasoning at the time. It just might give you better insights looking back as to why. Mm-hmm. But it's quite funny looking back and looking at all the times I was using the word pivoted. I pivoted from this to this. I pivoted from this. It was like this looks like an interesting challenge. I have no idea how to do that. Let's go. Let's start a business doing that. Like, how does I'm going? Like, because that's what it is. It's like this fearless there's no questioning in your head about, will this work, won't it work, or am I able to do this or not? It's just you decide you're going to do it, and you do it.
And it
right?
happens, yeah.
You just work out. I mean, doesn't always succeed. That's fine, but you kind of, the idea is you work it as you're going. Like it's almost a how hard could this be, or maybe not a how hard could it be, but more like a this can't be so hard. Like other people do this, other people have done this. There's a way to learn how to do it, so you do it. Like, you know, I joked with people now, like if I would have known how hard hardware manufacturing was, I wouldn't have done it. And you know, if I was to get I mean, I've been doing okay here. Like I'm supporting my family and I'm able to grow. I'm not able to retire anytime soon, but I've been doing okay doing this. But if I was to get a business analyst to come into my business and have a look at it and give me their thoughts, their opinion on my business, I'm pretty sure they'd turn around to me and go, "Why are you doing this? Like this is just so much hard work for very little reward. Like this doesn't make any business sense, right?" But you can't look at things that way. If you look at things those ways, people will be stopped all the time. Like you know, you'd be talk yourself out of doing almost anything in life if you look at the sense of it, right?
And there's a certain matter of so long as you are supporting yourself and your family, if you're actually enjoying it, then that's valuable as well. If you're getting anything good out of it for yourself, that's valuable.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you've found yourself in this position where you're interested in it, it's a challenge, you're engaged, that's actually, incredibly valuable.
Right, but I also have this worry about my ADHD going to go, yep, had enough of that, right? But I have other driving factors now that are keeping me doing what I'm doing, like my kids, you know, and their circumstances that are going to, you know, it's removed a lot of my ability. And now that I'm also aware of my ADHD, it's good timing that I've, you know, I can probably stop myself from doing the whole, hey, it's time to pivot. Like, what am I going to do next? But I think
it's probably build a PMP machine.
No. That me all the time. You know, you've had a lot of pick and place machines. You've had trouble with yours, or many of them. You know, you should design your own, like this ultimate pick and. No, I'll be the worst to design one. I'm not good at mechanical design. I know my strengths, right, as well.
Okay.
Sometimes I fool myself into what I think my strengths are. I'll be the first person to admit that, but I know that I'd be the worst person to design a pick and place machine. There's a reason why you don't get cheap, reliable pick and place machines.
Yeah.
There's a very good reason, and that's because they're extremely hard to do, almost impossible. So yeah, no, I'm not interested.
Fair enough. That was more of a tease than anything else. Apologies.
Even I recognise that's stupidity for me. Anyway.
Mike says we've got to be careful challenging you.
Yes, you have to be absolutely careful challenging me because I run with it like a dog with a bone. Like I just yeah. And I used to worry that I was doing it just to prove to myself that I could, but I don't have those conversations in my head. Like I don't. It's never about showing myself I can do something. I just always expect that I can.
Right.
And I know that sounds conceited because I don't always succeed in it, right? Like I always expect that I can, but I also fail a lot. But I'm the type of person that if I fail, I just get up and keep going. Or I you know what I mean? Like I've never been worried about the failing. But you know, when you got kids and mortgages and stuff, the risk factor becomes a lot more evident in decision making.
Sure.
Apparently, they call that, you know, getting older and maturer. But I don't know. I think it's less mature and more fear than anything else. But
fair enough.
But yeah, I think for me, my ADHD is in many ways helped me. Like I'm not the type of guy that could have been an accountant my whole life. Nothing against accountants. Got friends who are accountants, no problem. But for me, like I couldn't do the one job, the same thing every day thing, the, you know, climbing the corporate ladder. You know, it's just not how my brain functions.
Yeah, sure. Very good. Well, thank you very much for talking to us. I think that's a good place to stop.
No
Is there anything else you'd like to shout out, sort of show off or mention quickly at the end?
Not really, other than,
Okay.
yeah, I do stream every week.
Yep.
So if you've not seen one of my streams before, pop along. It's normally a lot of fun. I'm often breaking things rather than making things or fumbling, whatever. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yep.
But
There's
also
a link to your YouTube channel in the description, so anyone who's interested, please go ahead.
But also want to recommend that folks here that haven't seen the rest of your streams, go look back, watch streams. Liz has been interviewed. A whole bunch of really interesting people have been interviewed on the streams. I actually really enjoy listening to people's backgrounds and how they get where they got, right? Like in many ways very similar, but in many ways quite different. So I definitely recommend people go back and watch the streams. Really good.
That's very kind. Thank you very much. Fantastic.
No,
well, thank you for joining us. And next week, we'll be speaking with Brian Cantrell.
Cool.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.